does an anthropologist do? Popular images contribute to our understanding of anthropologists excavating ancient ruins and studying small remote tribes in foreign lands. Yet these images are only a part of the picture.
In the most basic terms, anthropology is the study of humans. Humans in every place and time, past and present.
The physical characteristics of humans and the materials they leave behind are just the beginning. Language, customs, social relationships, technology, and material items such as pottery, tools, and clothing are also a part of anthropological study.
Anthropology affords me the opportunity to deal with such a variety of things that I've never been bored during my career.
For most of this century, anthropologists have been employed primarily as college and university faculty, and many still are. But anthropological practice and application, in which anthropologists have directed their attention to contemporary societal problems, have always been a part of anthropology. Beginning in the late 1960s, the job market began changing. More anthropologists were being trained than could fill the number of available academic positions. In addition, there was an increase in non-university-based job opportunities, which were well suited to an anthropological approach and dealt with issues such as urban poverty, international development, and health and human services. Presently, nearly 1/3 of new PhD anthropology graduates and the vast majority of new MA graduates find employment in a wide array of positions in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, both foreign and domestic. Today, anthropologists are helping to preserve the cultural past, assisting governments, whether federal, state, local, or tribal, in identifying the social impact of development projects, understanding the dynamics of corporate culture, creating more productive and culturally relevant health and medical environments, and owning and managing firms which analyze and evaluate services and policies.
The limitations on the possibilities for anthropologists, I think, are mostly those of creativity and imagination.
Anthropologists are also involved with natural resource issues associated with forests, fisheries, parks, and conservation efforts.
You're also on the cutting edge of a number of big questions. The major questions like environment and how it relates with people.
It's very exciting to see the work of anthropologists that's actually being used to help manage fisheries.
And the greatest challenge of all is to cross the boundaries of natural resource thinking and management and cultural resource thinking and management so that the human communities, the Native Americans, African Americans, and others who have been traditionally associated with those resources are taken into account in our planning and interpretive programs and management systems.
The study of anthropology is actually divided into 4 large subfields, which continue to expand and diversify.
Physical anthropology, or biological anthropology as it's often referred to, is the study of human biology, not with an emphasis on the individual, but with an emphasis on populations.
Linguistic anthropology is the study of language structure, development, and use, and its relationship to culture. Sociocultural anthropologists study the social and cultural aspects of human behavior to understand and explain people's values and motivations.
Archaeology is the study of material remains for the purpose of reconstructing and understanding all aspects of past human behavior.
Each of the 4 subfields employs a holistic approach in studying and explaining culture. Rather than looking at economics, biology, or kinship as unrelated features, anthropologists try to examine the interconnections between all aspects of human life simultaneously.
The anthropologist and other social scientists working as part of a team with other disciplines really can make a contribution explaining the holistic way of looking at social systems.
When anthropology is viewed and understood as a whole, one can begin to appreciate its many applications. Physical anthropologists are often found in university settings. But often, teaching anthropology is just one of many roles.
As a university professor, I have several responsibilities. They include teaching, of course, research and publication, as well as community service, which extends from the development of the university community to the broader community in which professors are involved as consultants and educators.
One such consulting job in which Blakey is involved is the African burial ground dating back to the 1600s and discovered in 1991 during construction of an office building in New York's Lower Manhattan.
The African burial ground is the earliest and largest African cemetery that's ever been excavated archaeologically in the United States. Before the General Services Administration could begin its construction, they were required to contract an archaeological firm as well as physical anthropologists who could mitigate the site. That is, to do the needed excavation and documentation and conservation required to protect the historical significance of the African burial ground. I've tried to weigh the scientific importance against the business concerns so that I've really stood at the center of a very active and interesting process, not just involving archaeological materials and human skeletons, but a project that's very much, very alive, in which many people take great interest and about which they have very strong feelings.
Through his involvement with the burial ground, Blakey has found that all the anthropological subfields have contributed greatly to his work.
As a physical anthropologist, I might have only learned about human biology, but I do think that you only understand the skeletal remains well by understanding the history and the cultural context in which those people lived. My training as a four-fielder who has some background with living people and ethnological work has helped a great deal in at least appreciating the kinds of questions that I should be asking and the kinds of sensitivities that I should have.
Physical anthropology also sheds new light on how we live today. Douglas Ubelacher applies his physical anthropological skills to forensics.
Forensic anthropology basically means the application of our techniques in physical anthropology to modern medical legal situations. Basically, we take all these procedures that we've developed to study old bones and peoples of the past and adapt them to the study of modern medical legal cases, people that may have been alive 6 months ago.
In his position at the Smithsonian Institution, Ubelacher often consults with the FBI and others.
The skeletons that come to us represent collections of small and sometimes large puzzles that have to be resolved through our science. And I think the challenge that I feel intellectually is in answering questions that few other people can answer. But working in forensic anthropology brings the scientist in contact with problems of contemporary society.
One such problem is the homeless. This individual fell victim to the difficult circumstances of life on the streets. The body found in a crawl space of a bridge was burned beyond recognition. Ubelacher's task was to gather life history information through analysis of the bones, which could then assist authorities in identifying the remains.
What was really interesting to me was that by looking at the pattern of trauma and disease on this individual, we could learn a lot about his lifestyle, which in turn tells us something about the biology of the homeless. If you look at his skull, you'll notice there's a depressed fracture in the right side of his cheek area, which is healed. This is not something that killed him, but an injury that he suffered probably years before he died, which is fairly typical of the violence of street people and some of the problems they confront in trying to get through the day. Here's a very well prepared restoration or filling of a cavity in one of his teeth. However, you can see that in more recent years, he did not have dental care, and he has many untreated carious lesions or cavities. Here is clearly someone who early in his life was someone's son and was well taken care of, but fell on hard times, developed dental disease, suffered the trauma of the streets, and is a fairly typical example of what you might expect to find with a member of the homeless community.
While physical anthropology relies on tangibles to learn more about humans, linguistics focuses on communication. Cindy Marr is currently working on a project which analyzes the characteristics and effectiveness of two-way bilingual educational programs.
And these are programs that use both English and a non-English language to instruct students. It's essential that these programs use what we call the target language, or the non-English language, for at least 50% of the time. And these programs then provide students who are learning English as a second language a way of maintaining their native language while they develop their English skills, which is critical. The United States houses an incredibly diverse and rapidly increasing student population from many other countries. But we have had a tradition in this country of trying to mold the student to the classroom rather than trying to design the classroom around the varied needs and learning styles of students. It's not surprising then that many students from non-English speaking or non-mainstream backgrounds are not succeeding in school or even staying in school. On far too many instances, they are forced to shed their language and culture at the classroom door. So the field of education for students from linguistically and culturally diverse backgrounds is aimed at improving the education for these students, helping them succeed in school, valuing their language and culture, looking at them as incredible resources for classrooms in the United States.
Marr's role in the Bilingual Project is to observe classrooms and compile a directory of bilingual programs available around the country to be used as a resource in developing future programs. A particular observation stands out in Marr's memory.
When I had talked to some of the students after class to find out, how do you like this program? Do you want to learn another language? They loved learning the two languages. They loved learning about the other cultures. A couple of them said they wanted to learn a third language. And both groups of students really stressed the fact that they liked helping the students in the other language, particularly the ones that were having trouble. In this program, you get the sense that students are really proud of what they're doing. They have a lot of self-esteem, and you can see it, and they're not shy about talking.
The sociocultural subfield of anthropology has seen the largest growth in recent years. With new legal mandates, preservation acts, government-sponsored social programs, and new medical discoveries, just to name a few, sociocultural anthropology provides valuable information and services to society at home and abroad. Sociocultural anthropologists can also be found in small towns and rural areas. Robert Trotter offers the small community of Flagstaff, Arizona, a unique perspective on health and culture.
As a medical anthropologist, what I'm interested in is how culture affects the way people seek health care, how it affects their lives in a daily manner, either in getting well or getting sick.
Trotter finds the AIDS issue of particular interest.
That produced a desire to write some grants, and in this case we got funded from the National Institute of Drug Abuse to do a multicultural AIDS outreach prevention project. And the project is here in Flagstaff. It's the only really small town project of its type in the United States. And it's allowing us to see how all of those problems that occur in urban areas occur in a smaller situation.
The primary goal of the program is not necessarily to eliminate drug use entirely, which is an unrealistic undertaking, but to use anthropological skills and knowledge to communicate with the multicultural drug rings in Flagstaff and educate willing members about AIDS prevention.
Now that we've gone over some of the risks of how HIV is transmitted, that we might go to some ways to reduce those risks. And needle cleaning is one of those ways to reduce risks.
We're teaching people how to save their lives. And we're teaching them that they can change their lives either as individuals or as members of a group and become something that they aren't right now that they say they want to become. Not forcing them to change, but providing them a real opportunity to change.
Sociocultural anthropologist Lori Price is also involved in the AIDS Prevention Project.
Some of the methods we use in this regard are life histories, which help us understand our clients and their total world experience, and also observation. For instance, we have a study going on now where we actually observe people using injection syringes to see the extent to which they share syringes, which is one of the ways that HIV viruses are transmitted.
Price has helped produce an intervention manual detailing step-by-step instructions which the AIDS Prevention Program specialists must follow in educating drug users who come into the program. Along with the printed materials, video has also helped create awareness and provoke change.
We all know about the power of visual media in the American culture, and so we wanted to harness some of that, but in an anthropological way. Now, the purpose of our particular video approach, we had really 3 dimensions to it. One was we wanted to show people AIDS, because in a semi-rural area like this, people don't really see AIDS very much, and they maybe don't believe that it's really here. And a second purpose was to show localized imagery and local language that people could relate to, that would be culturally relevant to them. And the third thing was really harnessed to anthropological theory about personal narratives. The idea being that when people hear life stories of other individuals, these will have more power and help them change their own behavior.
You know, that's a scary thing to have, especially when you have a family.
Sure, yeah.
You know, the chances that you're taking by doing what I was doing right now, it's a scary thing to think that you can, because you have kids.
I think that it's really important to try to prevent the spread of HIV virus, and I feel good about being part of that kind of effort.
Sociocultural anthropology is also far-reaching geographically. For example, employment in international development accounts for much of the work anthropologists do in the public sector. Diana Putman applies her skills in various parts of the world.
AID is the Agency for International Development, and basically that is the agency that handles all of your governmental assistance. It's your foreign aid overseas, and we have a budget of somewhere between $6 to $8 billion, which is all non-military foreign aid, such as agriculture, health, private sector, things like that. One example, for instance, of international development work might be a water project I was involved in where we put in rural water supplies. That is, we put in wells and pipes into people's homes so they could have water. But we also got both men and women involved in managing the system and deciding where the system would go and how to keep it going once we left the country. And that's what we would call sustainable development. They take it over once our foreign assistance disappears.
Anthropologists often help to identify unanticipated consequences, which help make change less disruptive.
The anthropologist's role is to bring people back into the picture and make sure that they get the benefits from all the change and investments we make in their countries. We know a lot about these cultures. We understand about important things like cultural relativity, so we don't go in imposing American values. Instead, we try to see what exists and figure out how to make people's lives better in light of the conditions in their own countries.
Anthropologists engage in various types of problem solving related to socioeconomic change. For over 800 years, the Hopi Indian community in the village of Bacaville, Arizona, relied on the terrace gardens as their source of food and water. The natural springs and fertile soil represented the sustenance of life. And equally as important, the gardens enriched the Hopi tradition and culture, which passed from generation to generation. In 1960, the introduction of modern conveniences changed this way of life. Lee Jenkins, a native Hopi, believes the impact of technology has not been entirely positive.
Suddenly, overnight, we saw the abandonment of these gardens in favor of backyard gardens where faucets and hoses were a lot more convenient. So in my lifetime, I saw the activity that was here, and I saw the impact of technology on our culture. So after 20, 30 years of this kind of life way where we basically had just a remnant of gardening, some of us got around to thinking that in order to help us understand our past again, we had to get busy and begin to look at what we had left as Hopi people. And one of the things that we had left was, of course, a part of my life, a part of my parents' and my grandparents' parents' life, and these were the garden terraces.
But after 30 years of very little use, the gardens had begun to erode, deteriorate, and collapse.
We began to dream of the day when we could see many people down here again, planting, socializing, growing food, and thereby, I think, promoting Hopi philosophy.
The Hopi people looked to Northern Arizona University's Anthropology department for guidance and support. Miguel Vasquez, an agricultural anthropologist, was eager to help this Hopi community tackle the project.
Agriculture is not just planting things in the ground, it's also the way that people organize themselves in order to produce whatever it is that they produce agriculturally. And so it has, with these people in particular, it has a tremendous cultural meaning in the sense that their whole religion, their whole cosmology, their worldview is involved in agriculture.
Faculty, students, and the Hopi worked side by side to rejuvenate the gardens. Faculty contributed anthropological skills and agricultural knowledge. The Hopi contributed experience learned from generations of tending the terrace gardens, while students gained a learning experience more extensive and personal than could be found in any textbook.
The first thing you learn in working with Native people is that the basis of their society is reciprocity. And so what we've tried to do here is to develop a reciprocal kind of relationship so that we're definitely getting a lot out of this, me personally and professionally, as well as our students, as well as what I'm able to learn from here and take back into my classroom. But in exchange for that, we also feel like we're leaving something that's visible and tangible for people here.
From overseas to the deserts of Arizona to the corporate world, opportunities for sociocultural anthropologists to apply their expertise are unlimited. Elizabeth Briety is an industrial anthropologist at General Motors Technical Center in Warren, Michigan.
One of the questions that I am always asked by my friends, family, and coworkers is, what does an anthropologist do for General Motors? I usually tell them that I conduct studies of employees to understand the kinds of problems that they're having in their jobs. And I'm very much interested in their perceptions as well as their behavior. In short, their work culture.
Briety collects data for her studies through a combination of methods: casual conversations, interviewing, observation, and company documents.
Before I begin any project, I explain directly to the GM unit that I'll be working with that I will guarantee confidentiality. By that I mean that I will not identify any of the individuals who agree to participate in my study, and if asked, I will also guarantee the confidentiality of the particular GM unit involved.
Briety's fieldwork enables her to converse with employees involved in many aspects of the production process. On this particular day, she was with a GM robotics design team discussing the effects of new technology on GM culture.
Why did you feel it was important to develop RoboCut to cut the clay models?
Traditionally, it takes 3.5 to 6 years to design a new vehicle and get it to the market. Any company that can show them this process will have a tremendous advantage over competitors.
What are some of the advantages of RoboCut?
RoboCut is the first one on the world that uses a robot for concept car design. What we are doing is one element that can help the company to speed up the design process, to improve the quality and reduce the cost.
Gary, you, Elong, and others have been working very hard to integrate RoboCut into GM's day-to-day operations. What do you see as some of the key technology transfer issues involved with RoboCut?
Well, there's certainly technical issues related to the equipment and the robots that you see here, but a significant portion is the people issue. With this equipment and with this system, we are asking designers to do things much differently than the way they've been trained. And our success in transferring this technology hinges critically on our ability to handle the people side or the cultural side of the issue.
Because of her extensive studies and expertise on GM culture, Bridie moves comfortably from her role as researcher to that of internal consultant. Part of her responsibilities include conducting oral presentations.
Today I would like to talk to you about one important characteristic of GM culture, namely blaming.
During her fieldwork at an assembly plant, Bridie found that blaming was frequent and followed distinct patterns.
Employees blamed only those upstream from them in the production process, not those downstream. They only blamed the previous shift, not their own shift. Material handlers and others in the plant engaged in various kinds of blame avoidance strategies so that they would not be held responsible for shutting down the line if the parts ran short. For example, material handlers spent much of their day looking for parts that had not been properly dropped off in their department area. As you can see in this cartoon, if the material handlers could not find the parts, they would resort to checking their lockers. Employees frequently stored small parts in their lockers for just such an occasion when the parts ran short. We will probably never eliminate blaming from GM culture, but what we can do is we can learn to work with it, learn from it, and use it to improve the way in which we conduct our daily operations.
The rich history of humanity is uncovered and interpreted to the modern world by archaeologists. Archaeologists are employed in a variety of positions where their understanding of material goods and knowledge about cultural preservation are important, such as mediating construction projects, consulting for major corporations by examining patterns of purchase and discard of consumer goods, assisting in the preservation of tropical forests, and lobbying for better laws governing site protection. Peter Pillis is a forest archaeologist at the Coconino National Forest.
My area of responsibility includes about 2 million acres here in northern Arizona. It's an area that's rich in cultural resources. We have hundreds of thousands of archaeological sites and many places that are of traditional importance to Native American peoples. The majority of the job consists of inventorying these resources, managing and protecting them from project impacts, as well as coordinating archaeological research with universities and museums. As a federally paid employee, much of my job is also concerned with making archaeology and anthropology relevant to the American public.
Public involvement is one way to help people understand the world of anthropology. We find this process in place in the Eldon Pueblo ruins in the Coconino National Forest. Archaeologist Lisa Stewart is project director for this site.
It's a Sinawa Pueblo that was built by the Sinawa Indians about 700 years ago. The Hopis consider the Sinawa their ancestors. And we have the Arizona Archaeological Society program working this week and next week at the site. We have different programs come out almost every week during the season. And they're excavating in rooms that were excavated in 1926 by Dr. Jesse Walter Fuchs. And he used a different technique than we use today. And so we're seeing if he missed anything or what the technique exactly was that he used.
The 65-room Pueblo represents an educational resource for the entire community.
We offer programs to elementary school children, to high school kids who are looking for vocational information. We offer it to the amateur archaeologists, to children with physical challenges, and to the museum kids that go through the museum come out here also.
For example, once children work on the site, they have a stake in its future. The hope is that they will become protectors of all archaeological sites.
They won't be going out to the next site with a spray can and writing on the site. They'll go out and they want to protect it, and they'll identify that as a site, and they may even report new sites that are found. And that has happened. We go ahead and we learn about the excavation techniques, just enough to get them started, and then it's a one-to-one with the archaeologist, with the participant working in the soil. The excavating is just one tiny step, and then it goes off to a lab, and then it's analyzed, and it goes to a museum to be stored and to be understood by all the other scholars that come out and look at the information.
People working at the site under professional supervision learn to see from an anthropologist's perspective.
Another thing that I hope the participants start to understand is they start to be able to think and understand what was it like to be a Sanawa person. Not what was it like to look at their pottery, but what were they using it for, what were they feeling, what did the ground look like. It's just going back in time.
The skills and knowledge that anthropologists bring to their jobs share common elements. They are trained in the four-field approach and learn to develop a holistic perspective in analyzing and explaining phenomena. Applying qualitative and quantitative methods provides anthropologists with a more complete understanding of the cultures they study.
Some of the basic skills are being able to interview people, not just people in communities, but government people, corporate managers, and being able to move comfortably among arenas.
You need to be able to be fully conversant with computer and computer skills.
Fine-tuned communication skills are also a plus.
You need to be able to write clearly. You need to be able to express yourself without using a lot of jargon.
An anthropologist's perspective must be broad and open-minded in order to make a positive impact.
I think it's very important for applied anthropologists to work with people in other fields such as education, linguistics, sociolinguistics, sociology, psychology, because I think in this field of education and language, there's a real need for cooperation and collaboration among people from different disciplines.
I guess the sort of specific kinds of skills that you bring to this, first of all, are a willingness, and I feel real strongly about this, a willingness to roll up your sleeves and work alongside people.
Sometimes the skills a position requires are not clearly identified as anthropological.
I think there's a growing interest in our skills at state and local levels. They're not always called anthropological skills, and that's where the creativity comes in, and that's where making your own opportunities comes in. You need to be able to see an opportunity and say, anthropological skills will work here. They may not say, we need an anthropologist.
And when an anthropologist finds his or her niche, the results can be personally rewarding.
There's a lot of diversity. I'm doing something different every day. I'm going to different countries all the time. I have a chance to learn different languages. It's constantly a lot of fun and very rewarding.
Working for the Navajo Nation has been a great opportunity for me. It puts me back in touch with my people, the Navajos, and it puts me back in touch with the land that I grew up on. And sometimes after a long, hard day, I'm driving back and it's hard for me to believe that I get paid for this job.
There are so many issues, so many cultures, so many social systems that every day brings a new problem, new issue, new set of ideas coming across my desk. And I look forward to that.
It's hard to characterize the rewards from this work without sounding like a commercial. And it isn't for everybody. It is exciting. It is incredibly creative.
Anthropologists also get satisfaction from the contribution their work makes to society.
The AIDS prevention project that I work with, I think, is doing really valuable work here. I think it's helping avoid the spread of HIV virus.
Those of us who study early agriculturalists view our work as hopefully contributing to sort of our general fund of knowledge on the potential for agriculture to cause problems in human societies and to cure problems.
Well, I think the anthropologist brings the systematic skills to help us look at the people, the organization, and the culture of General Motors And that is a critical element in our ability to successfully implement technology and to move forward in today's competitive market.
Anthropological organizations represent valuable resources for anthropologists, as well as students to interact, develop professional networks, and share new ideas and information. For example, on a national level is the American Anthropological Association, consisting of many special interest subunits, such as the National Association for the Practice of Anthropology, or NAPA, and internationally, the Society for Applied Anthropology. On a local level, over a dozen independent practitioner organizations have sprouted since 1975. The most successful long-standing local practitioner organization is the Washington Association of Professional Anthropologists, or WAPA. The initiatives and cooperative ventures of these organizations not only benefit the public, but also help advance the discipline of anthropology. The uses for anthropology are endless and can vary greatly, but whether skills are applied to teach, to preserve, to discover, or to provide solutions, anthropologists share an interest in understanding human diversity in its many forms, and a deep-rooted desire to apply that understanding to make a difference in our world.